Hello. I know that we are rapidly approaching the end of the year because best books of the year lists are starting to be announced. And the first one I've seen is from Foyles bookshop. They choose a book of the year, but they run it almost more like a book prize in that they initially announce a shortlist before choosing their one big one. And just a few days ago, they announced the shortlist of 8 books. And it's almost more like the Nero Book Awards in that often the shortlist includes books from different categories. So there are books here of fiction and nonfiction and translated literature and children's books. And rather than me just sitting here and talking about the books, because I need to go into the center of London to do some errands, I thought I would go to the big Foyles bookshop on Charing Cross Road myself to explore these books in person and talk about them. And so do a little vlog about it and have a nice wander around the city as well, because I love doing that, even though it's quite a grey autumnal day here in London, but it's I think it's going to stay dry, so it'll just be a pleasure to wander around and stop and have a coffee. And I'm currently reading Ali Smith's new novel Glyph, and it is such a pleasure. I'm almost finished reading it, so I'm going to head into town and see if I want to buy any of these books, but we'll also discuss them along the way while I'm having a mooch around the bookshop. First, there is the highly acclaimed James by Percival Everett, which has been nominated for multiple book awards, will probably be nominated for many more, and it's definitely one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. It's ingenious how he relates the story of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but from the character of Jim's perspective, and this gives a whole new view of the landscape, the time period of race relations at that time, and it's just a brilliant and beautiful book that is at turns adventurous and funny and terrifying, and I think is absolutely fantastic journey that Everett takes us on. And I saw Everett speak about this book earlier this year and got him to sign a copy of the novel for me, and it's just definitely gonna stay on my shelves forever. Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, which by all accounts has been selling like hotcakes, and this story follows two Irish brothers who are mourning their father who has recently died. They're quite different ages from each other, and what I think is so clever about this story and why I found it so engaging was how Rooney is really testing the relationships between individuals when those relationships work on multiple different levels. So you have a brother who also acts like a kind of father figure, and a girlfriend who also acts like a kind of mother figure, and another girlfriend who acts as a kind of like daughter or student or mentee of one of the brothers. And I thought it was so interesting how it plays with the borders of these relationships between these different characters and following them as they have many intense and engaging conversations. The Empusium by Nobel Prize winning Olga Tokarczuk and translated by Antonia Lloyd-Jones. So this novel follows a student suffering from tuberculosis in 1913, and he goes to a health resort in an area which is now Western Poland, and we follow his daily routines and his interactions with the other patients there. Meanwhile, strange and disturbing things are occurring outside and maybe inside the walls of this health resort. And this is partly based off from The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, but also plays upon other literature like by books by Stefan Zweig and Joseph Roth and Hermann Hesse. It's also subtitled A Health Resort Horror Story, which might make it a good reading for this time of year. Butter by Asako Yuzuki and translated by Polly Barton. This is a cult Japanese bestseller that was inspired by a true story that is a crime thriller, and it follows the story and relationship between a journalist and a female gourmet cook. There are meant to be lots of mouth-watering passages in this, as well as really tense moments, though I've heard from some readers that this story does like really drag in some sections, and I've heard quite mixed things about it, so I'm not sure if it's a book that I'm personally going to be picking up. Want. This is an anthology of letters submitted anonymously by women from all over the world who are discussing their sexual fantasies and desires, and this is intended to open up a frank discussion about female sexuality without shaming, and it even includes an anonymous letter from the individual who compiled this anthology, the actress Gillian Anderson, who she is such a fascinating figure, and I love her character in the TV show Sex Education, so seems like really well placed to create an anthology like this. But I also love how Gillian Anderson has been in so many literary adaptations, and interestingly, I just saw that she is going to be in a new adaptation of The Salt Path. A History of the World in 47 Borders by Jonn Elledge. This is a nonfiction book which examines how and why different borders for countries from around the world and throughout time time have been drawn, some through a lot of consideration, others more through happenstance and chance, but how the designation of these borders obviously had a massive impact on notions to do with nationality and cultural identity, and how they played a part or led to more conflicts and war. Starminster by Megan Hopkins. This is a young adult novel about a girl named Astrid who has lived in a rhubarb shed her entire life because her mother, who resides on a farm, explains to her that the world outside is dangerous and she's trying to protect her from them. But then one evening a stranger comes and takes Astrid to a secret city in the sky called London Overhead, which exists above the city of London. And there she makes new friendships and has lots of adventures, but also realizes that this is quite a dangerous place that her mother has warned her about. And so this would be fascinating for me to read, as I'm someone who lives in London and knows the city well, so I assume there'll be lots of references to different landmarks, but I'm not sure. It's one I'll be getting around to. And finally, there is The World to Come by Robert Macfarlane and Johnny Flynn, and it's illustrated by Emily Sutton. And this is a picture book about the journey that a father and son take through the landscape, and how they develop an appreciation for nature and discover hope in the world, and also fall in love with words and rhythm. So I've only read one book by Robert Macfarlane before, his book Underland, which I thought was so brilliant and beautiful. So this and the illustrations in this are just absolutely gorgeous. And I am back. That was a really lovely trip and walk around London. Although my feet are quite tired now. I'm going to have to go make a cup of tea soon. But I went not just to Foyles bookshop, but to a couple other bookshops and had a wander around the Typewritten Museum and went to some clothes shops as well. And I just love London in the autumn. So really interesting to see Foyles bookshop's shortlist. Although I have no illusions that it was a panel of booksellers that came up with this list. It was probably more likely marketers that came up with it of the books that will be selling the best. But yeah, really interesting to see them all in person. And I did buy one, since I've read two already. The one that I bought is the Empusium by Olga Tokarczuk. And because this sounds more like her novel Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead than her other books that have been translated into English. I mean, I tried reading Flights and I just didn't get on with that book. Maybe I'll return to it someday. And also, I've still not got around to reading her giant, The Books of Jacob, which is such a huge book and undertaking. And from what I've heard, quite a trying process to get through the entire thing. But this sounds much more gripping and interesting, and also since it plays off from Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain, that's a classic novel that I've been meaning to read this year, so I think it'll be a great kind of double bill to read The Magic Mountain and then to read this novel. Yeah, let me know what you think of the Foyles shortlist and which you think should be their book of the year. I mean, personally, for me, I think it has to be James by Percival Everett, but then, you know, that's more in line with my own reading tastes, and I fully recognize that when you make a short list that's created of books of such different genre, I don't know how you judge them against each other, or what would, you know, count as the book of the year. I always think that's a kind of flawed process, but it's an interesting one to think about, though whoever makes the decision, hopefully they'll have specializations in different genres. Anyway, let me know what you think, or if you're interested in reading any of the books on the shortlist, or if you want to talk about any of your favorite books that you've read this year so far. I would love to hear about that in the comments, but I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.